It's me again. Welcome to the end of Q2, where gas prices and oil demand still remains very high, but yet we have yet to hear really any significant news from MMTLP, which is the main reason why many of you are here from MTLP and oil and gas stuff. Hooray! My interview with John Berta last week did get rescheduled. It was a blessing in disguise, as later that day there was a big tornado warning with lots of vortices, and there was one above my house. It was very scary. I was holding my dog, trying to hope it would go away. It did. It was good, but it was very scary. There was nowhere to go. It was just a wall of tornado icons. Couldn't go anywhere, just hunker down. So it would have been, and my internet was in and out, it would have been next to impossible to do that interview anyways. Like I said, a blessing in disguise that he had to reschedule due to having to finish things on his end, which piqued a lot of people's interest. That we are working, we meaning Smokey, myself. Smokey is the moderator of this. I think it's great. It benefits us all. And it's good to have a third perspective in there. A bit of a Greek chorus. We were trying to reschedule for sometime this week, but we'll see what Berta's schedule is. Again, this is more or less on his terms. It's going to be a pre-recorded interview. The majority of the questions are questions that he's seen going into this. This way, there's no surprises. There's no distractions. I am working hard on it. I'm not going to post private conversations, but I am working hard. At that point, you can believe me or not believe me. That's totally up to you. The demand for oil and gas does remain high. As far as India goes, Petrologistics has been importing crude oil quite a bit. Their crude oil imports jumped by 15% in April. But for June, they're going to have 3 times that amount. So 28 million barrels. So it's going to go crazy. Why is oil going crazy? Well, there's, of course, the global conflicts. It's summertime, and we're 2 years after that whole lockdown incident. People are just tired. They want to go somewhere. There's a whole sentimental industry's up. Oil is at an all-time high and demand is high. A lot of oil companies are rubbing their hands together. In fact, oil demand is so high that there was shippers moving casing pipe when I was driving Monday. I went to town at the sandwich shop to get some sandwiches. They were open for Memorial Day. And I wanted to get some sandwiches at the sandwich shop, so I drove into town, and at the intersection of town, the road that runs from basically Bastrop, so Houston, was coming on up with brand new casing pipe headed in a westerly direction. They could have been going to Midland, they could have been going to the Delaware Basin, they could have been going out wherever, but they were headed towards I-20. And in fact, the truck route that goes through my town often will sync up eventually with 20. Lots of trucks take that road. And if a truck has to turn in the intersection, good luck. It kind of puts the whole intersection in good luck. It's pretty interesting. It's a small town. The roads were built for horse and carriage size, but now we have these big trucks carrying oil equipment. If they have to make a turn, oh my goodness, or a house trailer comes and it has to make a turn, you see that, you duck out, you're like, bye. But it goes to show you that the demand is very high if logistics and commerce in the oil industry is happening on a holiday weekend. They're getting ready for Tuesday today. With that being said, a lot of people have taken bets that oil would go down by now, but it still remains high. Long-term analysts want to say that oil will go back down to about 95 a barrel, but so far it really hasn't. I don't know where it'll go from here. The demand certainly remains high. The demand for natural gas remains high. You think that Henry Hub, $8 per 1,000 cubic feet is high. And we talked about it in my previous video last week or 2 weeks ago, how high European gas prices was. According to this article, there's a summit this week about gas prices in Europe. Italy says put a gas cap price on it. We're tired of seeing the price soar up. It's so high. Put a cap on it. Put a cap on it. Europe says no. Europe will not put a cap on natural gas. It's going to go up. As a result, I think you're going to still see natural gas be on the up and up. Europe has a huge demand, and they're not putting a cap on it. Why aren't they putting a cap on it? There could be a few different reasons. Again, it's very quiet in terms of MMTLP front, but this is the end of Q2. And it has been a long and frustrating road for many of us. Most other oil companies at the end of Q2 are going to see a lot of profits. It's going to continue, and going forward with profits in an oil company, we've seen share buybacks. We have seen higher dividends. A lot of companies now have variable dividends. And oil companies seem to be on the up and up. And even Marathon had a terrific month. Marathon was in the 20s back in March. April it climbed up, and now Marathon has hit the $30 mark. Marathon has the closest refinery to the Oro Grande. The Oro Grande and the Marathon refinery about 44 miles as the bird flies. But Marathon's on the up and up. And I certainly am looking forward to seeing and hearing the Q2 earnings. But it'll be nice if something happens with MMTLP in the meantime. But I am looking forward to a lot of Q2 earnings with oil companies. So, as I was editing this, I thought of one question that I've been asked quite a bit, and people are still asking me about it, is why don't I talk about metamaterials as much? One, I do. I talk about metamaterials. I don't make as many videos on it as other people. There is a story behind it. So I do talk about metamaterials and why I invested in that company in particular. I've talked about it on the Twitter space. I was actively at the time looking for a metamaterials company to invest in. This was January 2021. And I found this company because it was the only company to invest in. Luckily, it had an oil and gas play attached to it. Oh, perfect, right? Like birds and oil. Match made in heaven. I have made meta videos. Yes. I also share a love of ham radio. George hasn't been active in ham radio in quite a few years. He does not have an active license. But I do. I like ham radio quite a bit. So why don't I talk about MMAT? Aside from occasionally criticizing the management, which yes, I have done. We all have opinions. So when I started making these videos on a regular basis, I talked with Smokey Nose on his show, and we sort of came to a mutual agreement where any questions about the dividend, he puts them to me, and then if anybody has any meta-specific questions like who owns what shares, executives that they're hiring on, company information, I give it to Smokey. It's like a mutual relationship, not even commensal. It's a mutual relationship. I take care of the dividend and the oil and gas side, and he does the metamaterials and the technology side. It worked out. It's great. I see no point in me making a lot of videos about the company when 5 other people are doing a fabulous job. I've made videos about metamaterials before and talked about how maybe the monolith was made of some metamaterials. Quite a bit. But as far as metamaterials goes, that's Smokey's jurisdiction, and it works out because then neither one of us, one, has to keep track of everything. 2, it's always good to say, hey, look, here, this person has great resources. It's a good networking skill to have. And I like that whole networking mesh ability. So that's why I have never really made too many metamaterials videos, because the other people do a terrific job of it. And why would I don't want to compete with those people. They're doing terrific. I will see you guys soon. Goodbye.